more of a visitor to Denver, you're going to want to press 4. And if none of those apply to you and you're just interested in what's going on in Denver, you'll want to press 5. For those who are watching us on screen, you can text A, B, C, D, or E as your choices in place of doing numeric responses. So again, what is your relationship to Denver? If you're listening by phone and live here, you'll press 1. Work here, press 2. Live and work here, press 3. You're more of a visitor to Denver, press 4. And none of these, you're just interested in what's going on in Denver, you're going to want to press 5. Here shortly, we will put up on the screen some of the responses that are coming in over the phone so that folks can see kind of how we are trending. It appears from what I'm seeing that most folks who have joined us tonight both live and work here, which is nice to see. But we do have folks who are residents and may work somewhere else, and that's great as well. Once again, if you live in Denver, press 1. If you work in Denver, press 2. If you both live and work in Denver, press 3. If you're more of a visitor, please press 4. And if it's none of these and you're just interested in Denver affairs, please press 5. Well, as we continue to collect poll responses here, I want to go ahead and welcome a number of special guests tonight, and I would be remiss if I didn't begin at the top of the organization with Denver Mayor Michael Hancock. Mayor Hancock, it's wonderful to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Always good to be here, Larry. Thank you again for your great and expert leadership and facilitation of these conversations.
Of course, my great pleasure and honor, Mayor. I wanted to kind of just get a little bit of a sense from you for what we're doing here tonight, what your purpose is in bringing the community together along with your colleagues for this conversation.
Thanks, Larry. You know, every time Denver considers the possibility of a general obligation bond, we work to reach out to the community. The community has, I think, tremendous value to make sure, one, we are on the right track, and two, that if we're going to move forward, that we're identifying projects in our community that hold value to the people. And so this is a great way to hear from people in terms of, yeah, this is something that we ought to consider. And two, if you're going to consider it, these are the type of projects that we find value in our community. It's important that we look through every rearview mirror, that we pull over every rock, and we have good, thoughtful discussion on every possibility.
And I know that you really want to make sure that the recovery for your city is equitable. And I understand that you are interested not just in knowing about how to help businesses, but how to help residents, how to think about infrastructure, just all kinds of different facets to this conversation. Is that right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I appreciate you using the phrase equitable, because the reality is we look and see how we're working to recover from this pandemic. And we want to recover, or we want to recover not only better, but forward. We want to look forward. And as we do that, we recognize we need to create, we have an opportunity to create greater equity in our community, what neighborhoods we need to go into. This pandemic has impacted a lot of people. It impacted all of us, obviously, but impacted a lot of people disproportionately. And we get a chance to address those communities that were, hurt or disproportionately impacted going forward. And that's what we want to do. There were industries that were impacted as well, and recognize that the construction, tourism, hospitality, restaurant, food and beverage industries were impacted. Do we have an opportunity to touch and to hopefully correct some of those challenges that were brought on by the pandemic? Absolutely. So equity is important. Matter of fact, it will be our guiding star as we go into this. How do we help those communities, those individuals, and those industries that may have been impacted disproportionately as a result of the pandemic?
And finally, Mayor, one area where I know you are not particularly equitable is on the basketball court and the ice. My question to you is Nuggets in 6, Avalanche in 4. What's your prediction?
You know, I think and expect and certainly hope that the Nuggets close the series out with Portland right now. And then let's see the Lakers lose as well, because we don't want to run into them in round 2 on our way to our first championship in the NBA in a long time. And certainly, you know, we're excited about what's happening with the Avalanche. They are just playing lights out above. They look faster, 2 times faster than everyone else on the ice. And so we want to keep that going, and hopefully, knock on wood, they will, and we'll be able to hoist Stanley Cup here very soon.
Thanks for being with us, Mayor, and we'll come back to you here in a little bit. I want to also introduce your colleague, the City Council President, Stacey Gilmore. Council President Gilmore, welcome to you. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Larry.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you the same. Nuggets in 6, Avalanche in a sweep. What do you think?
I think we're going to win it all. We deserve it, don't we?
I think, hey, I'm not a Denverite by birth, but I love the city, and I certainly think every city deserves to get to hoist the trophy at one time or another. So very good. Tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to hear from folks tonight. And before I get you to answer that, I just want the folks on the phone to know that you can go ahead and press 0 if you already know you have a comment for the mayor, the council president, and the rest of city staff. You can press 0. You'll speak to a screener. You'll give them some information, and then we're going to take callers live on the air here in just a moment. But Council President Gilmore, what are you hoping to learn tonight?
We have seen our communities come together in ways that none of us have ever witnessed before in our lifetimes. And through this experience, I know that our community can identify very easily what gaps we currently have, what they need in their neighborhood, what they would like to see us do as a city. And they deserve to have their voices heard. And so I'm honored to be part of these town halls to really hear that, and then encourage folks to post this, share it with your neighbors, get it out through social media, because we want people to have an opportunity to identify what we should be looking at as a city in this recovery, and really what we might be able to change or do better or do in a different way, so that we can really address some of those gaps that we saw, especially in our communities, and the disparities that were laid bare by the pandemic.
Really appreciate that input, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again throughout the broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Want to also welcome back Denver's Chief Financial Officer, Brendan Hanlon, who I'm delighted to see again. Brendan, good to see you, sir.
You too, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Of course. There is a lot to think about here when it comes to the economic recovery. I wonder if you could maybe just walk us through. I know we developed a little graphic to try to explain to the public a little bit about all the different potential sources of funding to help with the recovery. Would ask that for those who are just listening by phone, that you give them a little bit of a narrative of what we're seeing on screen. But if you could share with us a little of what we can draw from to help with the recovery.
Sure. We use Denver, have a really tremendous opportunity in front of us. There's a chart that's up right now for the folks who are on the phone that really outlines a number of different tools that have been provided to us or are active right now. Coronavirus relief funds that were provided in 2020 that continue today. Colorado Recovery Plan, the state is making announcements on its recovery here over the past week, 10 days. American Rescue Plan Act, we're in the process of receiving $300 million. And when we talk about tonight's forum, large investments are available to be made in our economic recovery from those funds, specifically around community recovery and business recovery, which is why we're asking you about those two investment strategies. We have our Elevate Denver bond program from 2017. Those funds are continuing to be rolled out, and we're accelerating the rollout of those funds. And then we have a new proposal in front of all of you, which is a 2021 general obligation bond, and that's a $400 million bond proposal. And it would invest in the city's infrastructure. And infrastructure has been a real significant key to our previous investment opportunities and strategies in the past, and provides a 2-to-1 economic benefit. When we invest $1, we get $2 worth of economic return from any construction investment we have. And that's why we're looking at deploying that strategy again, Larry.
Thank you very much, Brendan. I mean, it's remarkable. I'm sure you've seen this at times in your career, but I dare say that there's a little bit of a historic quality to just the level of investment that a city and county like Denver is poised to get or is eligible to receive to assist with the recovery. And I think that's why it makes it all the more crucial that we get the public's and the community's feedback as to how to best invest all of those dollars. So we're glad you're here with us. I know that there'll be times that we'll turn to you for your expertise and for your feedback. Thanks again for being with us. We're going to jump right into the first of our kind of categories of the way that we are poised to spend some of these dollars. And we want to ask you about community services and community recovery. So this first question asks, when it comes to community support, what is most important to you? And we have 5 options. So I'll read them out and then ask you to respond with the one that is most important to you. So when it comes to community support, which of these is most important? If it's childcare and you're listening on the phone, press 1. If it's food access, please press 2. If it's housing and support for people experiencing homelessness, please press 3. If it's mental health, please press 4. And if it's transportation, please press 5. I'll read those choices again. When it comes to community support, which of these is most important to you? If it's childcare, please press 1. If it's food access, please press 2. Housing and support for people experiencing homelessness, please press 3. Mental health, please press 4. And transportation, please press 5. And if you're looking at the text responses on screen, you'll see that instead of numbers, you would just use letters to indicate your text choice on the screen. You can also go to the website that's listed at the top of the screen to make your responses online. In just a moment, we'll show you some of the responses we're getting by phone. Looks like we have a fairly even distribution across several categories, and you'll see that here up on the screen. So you'll notice that support for people experiencing homelessness has a slight edge, but mental health, transportation, and childcare are all getting a significant amount of traction as well. We'll continue to allow folks to respond to this poll for another moment, and I will read the answer, rather read the question and the response possibilities one more time. When it comes to community support, which of these is most important to you? If it's childcare, please press 1 on your phone. If it's food access, please press 2. If it's housing and support for people experiencing homelessness, please press 3. If it is mental health, please press 4. And if it's transportation, please press 5. Most importantly, if you have a comment to make about the way the city should invest in community services, I want to invite you to press 0 right now. You'll speak to a call screener. We already have a number of callers that are queuing up. Press 0. You'll speak to a screener. They'll get your information, and then we will be sure to take your call on the air at the appropriate time. And we'll be starting with community services. And speaking of community services, we have Executive Director of Denver Human Services, Don Mares, with us to hear your comments. And Don, it's great to see you again. Welcome to you.
You bet. It's good to be back, Larry.
Don, can you just share with us a little bit about kind of where these particular choices come from as it relates to what you've been seeing from your perch as the director of the agency?
Oh, you bet. In fact, it's amazing how many people are seeing what we have been seeing in our agency. And I think both Mayor Hancock and Council President Gilmore really teed it up well to say that this whole pandemic has affected people so disproportionately. So I think it is critical that we are hearing from folks to be able to feel that we are doing all we can to fully recover and have everybody fully recover. So powerful words that I think you heard that really are music to my ears as somebody who wants to help people. We also know that, as has been mentioned, there's been huge segments of our community that have been impacted disproportionately. We know that there are people of color who've been disproportionately impacted, women who were in the workforce, those who work in certain industries. It is really showing us areas where we need to focus attention. And then we also talk about the choices that are on the screen are issues that have impacted some people who didn't have to face these issues before. So that's what I mean by from where we all sit now, we're seeing how this is impacting more people than ever. And really important that we hear the priorities that people have for the kinds of services we provide to really have everyone recover.
Once again, if you're just joining us, this is a community conversation about Denver's economic recovery. I'm Larry Schooler, joined at the moment by Don Mares from Denver's Office of Human Services, or Denver Human Services, and we've got Mayor Hancock and Council President Gilmore, among many others, with us. I'm going to go ahead in a moment and go to a caller, but I want to let folks know that if you'd like to speak live on the air as part of this conversation, you will want to press 0 and speak to a screener, and then we'll be taking folks on the air congruent with when their comment fits in with what we're talking about. So we will be taking a caller here in just a moment, but I do want to ask an additional poll question. And Don, I know we talked about this when we've spoken earlier, but it's just remarkable to me how much such a basic need like housing has become an incredibly difficult challenge for folks in the pandemic. We'll put the question up on the screen, and then I'll come to you for some perspective. Which of the following, this is for folks listening on the phone and folks watching us on live stream, which of the following housing solutions would be most helpful to you and your family? So you listen to the choices and then choose the one that would be most helpful as a housing solution. For choice one, it would be a wider variety of housing options in the neighborhood to reduce overcrowding or displacement. For two, eviction prevention. For three, increased affordable housing. For four, mortgage assistance. And for five, ongoing rental assistance. So I'm going to read those once more. If you believe it should be a wider variety of housing options in the neighborhood to reduce overcrowding or displacement, you'll press 1. Eviction prevention, press 2. Increased affordable housing, press 3. Mortgage assistance, press 4. And ongoing rental assistance, press 5. We are getting a lot of folks done as I look at the dashboard here, responding to a call for increased affordable housing. I'm just curious if you can share with me maybe a quick anecdote or a quick observation from your work over the past year and a half as it relates to housing challenges in Denver.
You bet. I don't think people are fully aware how much the city does to actually keep people in their homes. It's that story that we hear a lot about people who have been displaced or who can't afford it. There are a lot of people in our city who we have helped as a city, both through my department and through the Housing Stability Office, to stay in their homes. That's really important to point out. Of course, we have a panoply of services to help people with rent assistance, with mortgage assistance, with utility. We help with utility payments. But of course, when people are, in fact, in that unfortunate situation where they may not have a roof over their head, we do what we can to meet them where they are, to try to provide the services they need to make their stint of homelessness short as it can possibly be, and really have them understand that there are services for them, there's help for them, and they're best given in shelters, of course, but we do what we can to envelop people and meet their unique needs in this space.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have surmised as we've gone through this is that homelessness or challenges with housing are not something that are consigned to people who are living under the poverty line. I mean, you could be earning a fairly decent living, not just in Denver, but anywhere in the country, and nevertheless face significant challenges as a result, as a connection to just being able to stay in the home that you initially thought that would be well suited to you and your family and your circumstances. I'm going to go ahead and take a comment from the public. Again, if you'd like to speak in our conversation, you'll want to press 0 and speak to a call screener. Again, 0, and we actually have more than a dozen folks queued up to speak. So we'll be taking a number of calls here tonight. But I'm going to start with Patricia calling from Denver. And Patricia, you should be live on the air. Please go ahead.
I was commenting on mental health. And for me, I have not only experienced it myself, but I have lost my eldest child to suicide just within the last 4 months. And it was due to mental health. He could not get services any longer, and lost his home, his job, due to the pandemic, lost his family, and the mental health piece was not there as readily as it was before. And so everything spiraled. Without it, he didn't have a job. Without it, he didn't have a home. He didn't have a family. And eventually he didn't have a life. And I think it's so very important that we keep in mind that without mental health, without that loop for all of us as human beings. The rest doesn't mean anything, because we have to have that core of understanding and to be able to reach out and have that. And then everything else can begin to fall in place.
I want to first, Patricia, just express such deep condolence for your incredibly tragic loss. I know we always talk about how there's no harder loss than having to bury a child, and I'm sure that this is no exception.
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly sorry.
It truly was. I mean, we did not see it coming, but but now looking back, we really realize how much there was there, and how much he was reaching out to his therapist, to his, for his medication, for everything, and hitting brick walls, And most of it was because of the pandemic, but it was also, him giving up, because it was such a fight. Nothing was easy. Everything was a fight.
It's also not easy to tell your story on the air, and I want to just commend you for the courage it takes to call us, to get yourself into the speaker queue, and to speak. I want to just ask you before we let you go. Is there anything in specific that you would like for Mr. Mares' agency or the city and county to really prioritize as it relates to support for those in need of mental health support?
For me, I also worked at Denver Health for 22 years. And, I watched people come in that needed mental health. And for many of those years, it was easy to refer them and watch them get the help. But as the years went on, there wasn't enough help. And I think we have to get back down to basics and realize that has to be the number one thing, before the medical, before the, so many of the other pieces. It's mental health is just so important. They have to feel loved. They have to be cared for and feel safe.
And I'm sure that your child felt your love and your family's love. And Patricia, again, I want to express all of our deepest condolences to you for this loss. I also want to just hold some space here before I turn to Don. I mean, this is not an easy topic to discuss. It's incredibly painful to hear of the loss of Patricia's child. And so rather than just jumping right into, policy and budgets and stuff, I kind of want to just hold a little space here for Patricia and her family on this incredibly tragic loss. Don, I understand that you yourself actually have some very high level mental health experience. And so wonder what you could share just based on what you're hearing Patricia share.
Well, and like a lot of people have a brother who isn't with us anymore, and he's suffered from serious mental health issues. So that, Patricia, I guess you don't know how many people that just sharing your story you may have helped right now, people who are struggling, who have experienced your courage. So as Larry said, thank you for being that courageous. The only two things I really want to make sure people hear is there is a Colorado crisis line that I don't have the number in front of me. Maybe somebody can post it, that people should call. Wonderful organization, great services. And secondly, thanks to the voters of Denver, we passed a tax that's directed to mental health services. The mayor was kind enough to appoint me to the board of Caring for Denver, and we have given out $40 million already of the taxpayers' money to help people. And so there are efforts being made in this space, and we will just keep you in our thoughts and prayers, Patricia, as we move forward.
I also wanted to alert the public to a couple of resources. There's a toll-free number, 1-844-493-8255. You can also text the word TALK to 38255. Let me say those again, 844-493-8255. For a call, for a text, it's the word TALK, T-A-L-K, to 38255. hard to pivot from that, but we're gonna try. I do want to ask one more question of the public before I take our next caller, which we're going to do here in just a moment. It'll be Jenny in North Denver in just a second, but we do want to ask one other question as it relates to community assistance. And that would be, which solution would be most helpful to you and your family as it relates to accessing nutritious food? Which of these solutions, there are going to be 4 that I'm going to read off, would be most helpful to you and your family to access nutritious food? If it would be more farmers markets or community gardens close by within a 10-minute walk, press 1. If it would be more food delivery programs, please press 2. If it would be more food sources that meet my special dietary or cultural needs and preferences, please press 3. And if it would be more places that accept Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, or Women, Infant, Children, please press 4. Let me read those again. Which of these would be most helpful to you and your family? If it's more farmers markets or community gardens close to the house, press 1. More food delivery programs, please press 2. More food sources that meet your dietary or cultural needs and preferences, 3. And more places that accept food stamps, also known as SNAP, or Women, Infant, Children, please press 4. I have a number of folks responding with interest in farmers markets and community gardens close by. We'll get some phone results up on the screen here in just a moment. And as I mentioned, we want to go to some more callers that are calling in as it relates to community services. So hopefully going to get to, oh, beg your pardon, I'm shifting the order here a little bit. So I'm going to go to Stephen calling us from 10th and Osage tonight. And Stephen, I think you have a question very specific to food. So we'd love to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, see, I have a 3-year-old kid, and we don't qualify because they put me and my girlfriend's amount together, and we don't qualify for food stamps, and I just want to see if there's a way we can maybe get a little help because he's been eating us out of home, and on top of that, my son is supposed to receive COVID-19 refund and all that, and I did not receive those other last 2 checks that been sent out at all.
We really appreciate that input. Don, did you have something you could share with this caller?
Well, we may be able to look into your situation and see what's up. A couple of ways to connect with us is our general number is 720-944-4DHS, 720-944-4DHS, denvergov.org/human services. And know that even if the formal SNAP program doesn't work out for you, there are a lot of food access programs that are going. This whole food issue has been the one startling issue that has hit my brain, which is how many people need food. In fact, Council President Gilmore and I put together a healthy food pantry out where her office and my office are out at the Ari Taylor building in Montbello. We got to get those up and running again. But there are places where you can get food, and I understand it's a little more difficult, but why don't you try to reach out to us, and we'll see if we can't look at your situation and at least point you in a good direction.
Could you say the number one more time, Don, for Stevens and others' benefit?
720-944-4DHS, Denver Human Services.
Thank you so much. We're going to take another caller on community services before we pivot over to businesses and the economy, the local economy. Jenny has been standing by patiently. She's in North Denver. And Jenny, if you're there, please go ahead. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. My question is around childcare and specifically around out-of-school time programming, which is that after-school and summer programming. And just wondering how the city would like to allocate funds to those comprehensive programs that are like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Scholars Unlimited, Colorado I Have a Dream, that provide no-cost programming. And we do know that there's a sustainability issue with those programs. And then more specifically, how does the city see working with Denver Public Schools, who I just saw elected a new leader, and congratulations to him and well wishes. How do they see them working and partnering with Denver Public Schools to get some funds to those community partners, knowing that about 90% of the funds went specifically to the district instead of the state in the city?
Go ahead, Don.
I could, Larry. Yeah. So before I launch into what's happening, again, unquestionably, this is a huge challenge area. There's not enough daycare. I think the percentage I heard from the state was that we serve in our public programs about 11% of the people who need childcare, and the private sector serves about 35 to 40%. So there's this big gap there. Now, we have a couple of really good partnerships that are going on in the city. That is not only through our child care assistance program at our department, but also through the Denver preschool program and also through the Head Start programs. And I'll tell you, the relatively new head of the Denver preschool program, Elsa Holguin, she is thinking out of the box, and she was working, she used to be at one of the foundations. She's working very closely with DPS to see how can the Denver preschool program partner with more people to really help in this space, in this gap that we're seeing. So, you know, thanks for your comment. It reinforces that this is an area we need to really help. It's really impacted a lot of people, especially women who, you know, had to go home, and we need to get on this one. So thanks for your comment, Jenny.
I'm smiling a little, Don, only because my own family is, you know, in a position of needing help sometimes with childcare. We're staying with my in-laws at the moment for partly that reason. So this is something that resonates with me a great deal. And I know camps are not always, you know, accessible to every family. So there's certainly that. I'm also getting a note that there's a collaborative work being done with Denver's Early Childhood Council to ensure parents have access to affordable, quality childcare. We'll get to some additional comments on that here in just a moment. If you're just joining us, this is a community conversation about Denver's economic recovery, and along with Mayor Hancock and Council President Gilmore, I'm Larry Schooler, along with several of our city and county executives. We're going to be taking your comments throughout the rest of this evening. If you press 0, you'll speak to a screener. Team, I'm very pleased to say, but I'm sort of daunted to say that we've got 18 folks waiting to speak. So we certainly have a lot to get to here in the remaining time we have. But for those who are waiting, please know that we will get to as many callers as we possibly, hopefully every single one of them. This is just a display for those watching us on live stream who can understand what we are talking about as it relates to community services, whether it be childcare, housing, transportation, access to healthcare, putting food on the table, or access to mental health resources. Just so much to consider. Don, I'm sure we'll be hearing from you later on in the program, but thank you very much for your participation.
You bet.
We're going to pivot now to business recovery. And actually, before we do that, we want to ask another demographic question just to kind of get a sense for who's joined us tonight. So I'm going to ask for a question about folks' sort of cultural and racial and ethnic background. So which of the following 5 responses best describes you? If it is Black or African American, you're going to want to press 1. Hispanic or Latino will be 2. White or Caucasian will be 3. Multiracial or biracial will be 4. Asian or Pacific Islander will be 5. That's if you're on the phone. Again, Black or African American, you'd press 1. Hispanic or Latino, you'd press 2. White or Caucasian would be 3. Multiracial or biracial would be 4. And Asian or Pacific Islander would be 5. So it looks like we have about 30% of our audience identifying as Black or African American, another 16% Hispanic or Latino, 42% white or Caucasian, and a number of others are there as well. So we just wanted to get some sense of the demographics that we have on our call tonight. So thanks to all those who have responded to that question. And we're going to move on here to a question about business recovery. So when it comes to specifically ways for Denver's economy to recover, what do you think is most important to support an equitable, sustainable recovery for the local economy? Again, what do you think is most important for helping the local economy? So for those listening on the phone, I've got 5 choices. Please listen to all of them and then give us your top choice. Which of these is most important for an equitable, sustainable recovery? If it's job seekers and workforce development, please press 1. Local business support, please press 2. Community and neighborhood support, please press 3. Public infrastructure and investment, please press 4. Or government regulations for Denver businesses, please press 5. I'll read those again. When it comes to Denver's economy, what is most important to support an equitable and sustainable recovery? If it's job seekers and workforce development, you're going to want to press 1. Local business support, press 2. Community and neighborhood support, press 3. Public infrastructure and investment, please press 4. And government regulations for Denver businesses, please press 5. And while we're getting responses in, I want to welcome in our Director of Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, Eric Hiraga, with us tonight. Eric, great to see you again. Wherever Eric might be. There he is.
Hi, Larry. Great to see you again, and thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, you bet. And I know that as we were completing the other conversation, there was some chat about childcare and kind of the correlation with local economic development. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to just briefly share as we get responses in on this question, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Childcare is a very key issue, and that was that previous question. Don Mars hit it right on the spot. As people are going back to work, there's some impediments to residents and their families, and childcare is one of those challenges we really need to address, along with transportation, along with healthcare, along with other issues that really creates a barrier to getting back to the workplace. So that is one of the areas that we are looking at very hard.
Only because we have such a prolific speaker queue, I'm going to go straight to a caller, and then we're going to get to some other poll questions and other comments for you to make. So I know that we have Matthew in the Sunnyside neighborhood who is joining us tonight and has a comment related to workforce, I believe. Matthew, I think you're on 44th and Vallejo, and if you're there, please go ahead.
I am. I hear a little baby lullaby in the background here. My question's about the creative sector. That's our work. Is we have an audiovisual company, and then we have been working with Denver Arts and Venues to do the Art of Mass Gatherings. It's a program for event producers to learn how to do more sustainable and safe events. And what we're really hoping is that this ARP funding is generationally a huge amount of money, $300 million for Denver, and I've understood that our nation's spending more on this code recovery than it did on World War II. Back in those days, there was stuff like the WPA and other sorts of places for artists and creatives to kind of develop skills in addition to making art that help put them in a good position in society to be first and second responders. That's really what we're interested in. So my question is, what's on tap for that sort of workforce development? And it's probably a little bit more towards nonprofits and businesses that want to pitch ideas to get into funding for workforce development. What could we expect to see, and how can we best approach that?
Sure, thank you very much. And certainly, as we look at different industries that were that were impacted by this pandemic, the creative side, arts, culture, entertainment was definitely heavily impacted. I know that as we are looking forward to really understand and prioritize where we're going to put our resources, that's a big part of the vibrancy of this city and will be a focus. In terms of the support that we have given, including businesses, including nonprofit support, we have deployed nearly $20 million towards that area, over 3,000 businesses, but we know that there will be more resources and that we can do more. Really, this is within the arts and venues portfolio, but they have also had a artist relief program deployed over 1.1 million for artists and venues to over 440. So our hope is as we get more resources that we will continue such programs. In terms of workforce, we are developing strategies for RFPs for different sectors. We're about to launch some awards pretty soon, so please get in touch with our office and we'll communicate with you as far as the future opportunities. This pandemic's been interesting, to say the least. We had over 55,000 people on our unemployment rolls at the peak of this pandemic. And even though we've gone down from 13.4% unemployment, we're still around 7%. So there's a lot of work to do. And our workforce service department is going to be a key element of that.
And actually, we're going to get to workforce development here in just a minute with our next poll question. I want to let folks know that if you have program suggestions that are more detailed than the questions we're asking, we want to really encourage you to go to risetogetherdenver.org. That's risetogetherdenver.org. And in a moment, I'll take another caller, but I do want to get to another question that's specifically related to employment seekers. So for folks listening on the phone, here is the question we want to have you answer. If you're seeking employment, and I was in this position probably about a year ago, what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from returning to work? And so I'd ask you to pick from these 5, the one that's probably most significant as a barrier. If you're seeking employment, what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from returning to work? If it's no opportunities in my field, or I'm looking for work outside of my field, press 1. If it's I don't want to return to my previous job because of the low pay, press 2. If it's I don't have childcare and or elder care coverage, which we were talking about earlier, press 3. If it's I don't have reliable transportation, please press 4. Or if it's lack of technology or internet access to either work remotely or explore job opportunities, press 5. So I'll read those again. They're lengthy, and it's important we get your input. If you're seeking employment, what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from returning? And this may be something, if you're not specifically seeking employment, that you have heard from a relative or a loved one or a friend. So if you're seeking employment, what's the toughest barrier? If it's no opportunities in my field of expertise, or I'm looking for work outside my field, press 1. If it's not wanting to return to a previous job because of the low pay, press 2. If it's not having childcare and or elder care coverage, press 3. If it's not having reliable transportation, please press 4. And if it's a lack of internet or technology to explore jobs or to work remotely, please press 5. It's ironic, Eric, just now it said my internet connection was unstable. So I was thinking about internet access just in that very moment that we were putting the question out there. This is a tricky one, Eric, I'm sure, because I'm sure you're hearing about all of these challenges in one form or another. Any reflections on what you've been seeing in this regard?
Yes, ultimately, we want people not only get back to work, but really to get back to jobs that provide good wages and career advancement opportunities. So as we deploy our programs and as we look at our previous experience, we have different sectors that we really, and populations that we really focus on. When you think about the populations, we think about 50 plus, people with disabilities, women programs. We also think about girls who code. When you look at the industry sectors, we have a construction careers program, and really looking at upskilling people, having them have an opportunity for career mobility and earn higher wages. So that's going to be a big part of the strategy.
I'm going to take a caller next. If you're listening and are still waiting to speak, thank you for your patience. We will be getting to you. If you haven't yet spoken, we want to make sure you know you can press 0 and speak to a call screener and then be placed in our queue and taken live on the air. We also are getting comments in from our other language simulcasts, and we'll try to read those off as well. We're going to go to Portia in Denver, who had a comment, I think, related to financial services and education. Portia, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Portia. I'm the executive director for a nonprofit called Wealth 228 that provides financial education workshops to the African American community. And I was wondering what kind of things are being done to provide financial education to community members so that they can learn about how to manage their finances, how to build an emergency fund, so that if ever there's another situation like a pandemic, they know how to manage their funds in an emergency and they aren't finding themselves in dire financial straits, especially for communities that were most affected by the pandemic and historically do tend to have a lower income, such as the African American community.
Portia, thanks
Yes.
so much for that question. I was just thinking as she asked it, Eric, that that's something that could be helpful at any time, not just within or after the pandemic, but I'm sure you've got some good resources to share.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Larry. And thank you for the question, Portia. It's not within our department, but the city does have their Office of Financial Empowerment. And really to assist residents within the city, you could schedule an appointment with them at 720-944-2498. And there's many partners that they work with really to help people with their finances and their unique situations. On the business side, we also have partnerships with a number of nonprofits for those struggling businesses as well.
And go straight to another caller. Thanks, Eric, for that information. I want to make sure we got to everything. I was getting a lot of notes in the chat here. I know that folks can email fec@denvergov.org to get in touch with those coaches. They can also call 211 or 311 for help with scheduling appointments there. Let me go to Pamela. Pamela is in Northeast Denver and had a question about educational initiatives to teach people to grow food. Pamela, please go ahead.
Yes, I had questions about, in our neighborhood, we have quite a diverse grouping of people. We have Indians next door, Hispanics on the other side of us, Asians, and we all live in a mishmash here in Green Valley Ranch. And one of the nice things that we see is that, neighbors in this neighborhood actually do reach out to each other. We grow a variety of different things. I have a beehive in my backyard, so I provide honey to other people. But that isn't uniform or even something that I see in many other places as far as Denver. I'm originally from Texas. But I think that being able to have education, whether it's through the public libraries that are available or, interactive community meetings where they can be taught, even when I lived in an apartment, I was growing fresh herbs and a few things that helped us that would make our food more nutritious, more nutrient dense, and can be beneficial for your own self-worth, and how that might actually work with this program that y'all are looking to use these assets for. Is that even an option or a consideration?
Thank you so much for that question. I mean, such a great specific kind of interest, Eric, to touch upon. And just before you answer, I just want to let folks know we will take some additional calls on this topic. Just press 0 if you'd like to get into our queue. But Eric, go ahead.
Yes, I think that's why we have these community forums to get input and feedback and all these new ideas. I think I'm going to have to send this one to our team, whether it's a community garden approach and more healthy access to food. That's definitely been on the top of our list as we've worked on various projects to provide resources to different neighborhoods. We do want healthy food access, and that's been one of our approaches. But I think that detail and really getting from the residents and moving on. The Denver Public Library does have gardening classes out there, and you can check out their website. But with these new resources, I think that's another idea to put on deck.
Thanks very much, Eric. I am going to be taking a couple of callers here in just a minute, but I want to get to one more question in this category related to business ownership. So if you are a business owner, as you prepare to move toward opening at full capacity, we want to know what's the most concerning barrier to success for you. So if you're a business owner, but even if you're not specifically an owner and have some connection to someone who is, what is the barrier that you are most concerned about as you think about reopening? So I'll give you 5 choices and tell us which one is most concerning. If it would be employee and customer health, please press 1. If it would be household demands like a lack of child or elder care, please press 2. If it would be the cost of your rent or your lease or your mortgage, please press 3. If it would be lack of customer demand, please press 4. And if it would be needing more employees, which we've been hearing about quite a bit in the news these days, please press 5. So once more, what is the barrier for a business owner preparing to move towards full capacity that you're most concerned about? If it's employee and customer health, press 1. If it's household demands like lack of child or elder care at home, press 2. If it's the cost of rent or lease or mortgages, press 3. If it's a lack of customer demand, please press 4. And if it's needing more employees, please press 5. I mentioned, Eric, hearing a lot in the media about difficulties that I know food service is having, perhaps hospitality, in just getting people to come back and do the work that needs to be done now that we're reopening.
Yes, I think there's a number of challenges out here, many on this list here, and I see 67% on rent, lease, and mortgage assistance. We are looking to expand our Business Impact Opportunity Fund for one-time grants to help businesses get over that hump. It could be relocation, dislocation assistance because of increased costs. It could be safety and security improvements to be provided by these grants, or even facade improvements. But we really want to make sure that we are keeping the character of our business, of our neighborhoods, and that includes our small businesses in our backyard.
Going to take some calls. We have still a dozen or so folks wanting to speak before we conclude, and we will get to one more topic related to infrastructure here in just a minute. But let me first go to John in the Rhino District. John, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing fine, thanks. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, mine was concerned with pretty much infrastructure. What I'm looking at is I do brick restoration and work on a lot of old houses, and there's so many of them that need repair. If you look at the chimneys in this town, if they haven't been worked yet, they need to be worked. They're leaning here, leaning there, walls falling down, front porches falling apart. And there's not enough people in this town to do that type of work. There are people doing that type of work, but they're using the wrong materials. They're using the wrong type of cement, wrong type of bricks, wrong type of style. And I'd like to open a school to teach people this trade. The younger people would be good to teach them, to give them a livelihood to raise a family, put food on the plate, roof over their head.
John, it's great to have your input, because I think this is something that we kind of overlooked a little bit in the way we asked the initial question. I think we were talking about workforce development. Eric, as I'm listening to John, I'm just thinking, that's a workforce development opportunity as it relates to, empowering someone like John to create some sort of opportunity for people to learn a specific trade that he sees as being in high demand.
Yes, and thank you for taking on the challenge, John. We do see homes in disrepair, and the city does have resources and a number of programs for home rehab assistance that is provided through our housing division and in partnership with DURA, our Denver Urban Renewal Association, and really focusing on the under-resourced communities. So as a resident, if you're in the 50% AMI range or 80% income range, you can qualify. So just want to provide that as resource. But going back to the workforce question, we would be happy to learn more about what you do and how you can help. We do have a number of programs. I mentioned the Construction Careers Program that really helps train and upskill in the construction trades. So maybe there's a match there, and be happy to work with you.
If you're just joining us, we're having a community conversation with the people of Denver about the city's economic recovery out of this nightmarish pandemic, along with Mayor Hancock and Council President Gilmore and several city executives. I'm Larry Schooler. We're delighted that you have joined us, whether by phone or watching us on our live stream. For those who are still holding to speak, please know we are going to get to you here in just a moment. We also are encouraging folks who are on the line who haven't yet spoken to a screener and want to speak to press 0. Let me also let you know that risetogetherdenver.org is a great way to give us some additional input. You'll see a lot of tools there to share your ideas for how best to leverage the money that is flowing into this community to help with the economic recovery. Eric, I'm going to pivot here in just a minute to infrastructure, but I know we'll need you as we go through the rest of our broadcast. Thank you very much for being here with us. We have a visual up on our screen that just illustrates some of what Eric was talking about as it relates to Denver's economy, changes and fluctuations in unemployment, some disparities in different racial and ethnic groups, percentages of small businesses that are open, and how much there has been widespread pervasive unemployment across the Denver community. All right, so we are going to pivot to one additional kind of demographic question before we move back into infrastructure investments. And this is a sensitive question. I want to acknowledge that off the top, but I think it's one that would be really helpful to us. The question is, how worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses? How worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses? If you would say very worried, you'd press 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you'd say somewhat worried, you would press 2. If you would say neutral, you would press 3. And if you would say not worried at all, you would press 4. How worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses? If you're very worried, please press 1. If you're somewhat worried, please press 2. If you are neutral, please press 3. And if you're not worried at all, please press 4. I've been doing these kinds of conversations now for close to a year, and I know that our answers to these questions has changed. We're seeing, as you can see on the screen, more folks saying that they aren't as worried, although nearly more than a third of those responding to this poll question are clearly worried to some extent. But I think it's interesting to see that as we have made such progress with vaccination and with other forms of reopening, folks seem to be a little bit less worried, but we want to acknowledge that there are lots of folks who may be very worried about how to put food on the table next month. We're going to pivot now to infrastructure investments. I'm going to welcome in Acting City Engineer for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, Adam Phipps, who's going to be with us to hear your feedback and speak on infrastructure investments. Adam, great to have you and welcome back.
Great to be here. Thanks, Larry.
We're going to ask an initial question to the audience and then get to some calls. Our first question that we want to put to the audience is, when it comes to citywide infrastructure, what is most important to you? And there's some long choices on this particular question. Adam is nothing if not sophisticated, so we've got some complex choices to put to the audience. So I'm going to read these out and then just ask for you to pick which one of these is most important in the category of infrastructure. So if it's building safe and accessible streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transportation, press 1. If it's expanding and enhancing the parks and recreation system, you'll want to press 2. If it's supporting water conservation and environmental resiliency, you'll want to press 3. If it's improving community and cultural buildings like libraries, fire stations, venues, arenas, museums, press 4. And if it's improving spaces to serve people experiencing homelessness and promote public health, press 5. I'm going to read those one more time. When it comes to citywide infrastructure, which is most important to you? If it's building safe and accessible streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transportation systems, press 1. If it's expanding and enhancing the parks and recreation system, press 2. If it's supporting water conservation and environmental resiliency, press 3. If it's improving community and cultural buildings like libraries, fire stations, venues, arenas, museums, and more, press 4. And if it's improving spaces to serve people experiencing homelessness and promote public health, press 5. One of the interesting things, Adam, to me about this question is just the remarkable evolution in the way we think of infrastructure in this country. And I imagine you're seeing that in Denver as well.
Yeah, certainly. And, traditionally, when you think of infrastructure, you think of roadways, you think of bridges, but really it's all of those assets that support a community. And infrastructure is vital for a community to thrive. And we see that here in Denver. I like this question because it really helps define what infrastructure is. It's not, it includes the fire station to ensure that we have adequate response time to every home, in Denver. It's the library so that we have the ability to learn and communicate and collaborate. But it's also the environmental infrastructure. It's the pipes beneath our feet, our stormwater, and how are we managing our infrastructure in a way that we're being good stewards of the environment.
Thanks very much, Adam. And just in the interest of our queue here, I want to go ahead and take some calls. I've got JC, I believe, joining us first of all. And JC has been standing by for a while to talk about an infrastructure matter. JC, please go ahead.
Hi, I moved to Denver from Chicago about a year ago, and I'm curious to see the thoughts about what is the plan for creating more transportation infrastructure for mass transportation, buses, trains, making sure that we can get in and out of the city a little bit easier without using single-use cars.
Thanks for that, JC. And Adam, as someone who loves riding public transportation, I know that it's certainly taken a massive hit over the course of the pandemic, but I imagine service is beginning to be restored. What can you tell JC about that?
Yeah, and that, Larry, is a good point that we are starting to see a restoration of services, which is a great benefit. But JC, you identify, an important point, which is in order to be able to move around the community, you need to have options. And for a lot of folks, that best option is mass transit. One of the things you've seen Denver respond to that need just within the last couple of years is the pivot that we made ourselves as a department of public works, transitioning into a department of transportation and infrastructure. And you see us not only focusing on the direct investment of infrastructure, but also in providing services. And so you see Denver recognize that need, we hear that need, we want to shift the way that people who live and work in Denver move about it, and we're taking that ownership upon ourselves. And so certainly appreciate that comment, and it's a comment that we receive often, and it's something that we're working creatively to solve.
I'm going to go straight to another call just in the interest of making sure everyone gets a chance. We're going to go to Natalie. Natalie's joined us from the Westwood neighborhood. And Natalie, love to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the call. I'm very passionate, so I will try to keep this brief. I would like to advocate for the city to support bringing a library to the neighborhood of Westwood. As was mentioned earlier, infrastructure investments provide a 2-to-1 return on investments, but a library investment is almost a 5-to-1 return on investment. The Westwood neighborhood is a richly diverse community, but they have one of the smallest they have the smallest library in Denver. It's only about 900 square feet, so it's probably about the size of most people's apartments, maybe just a smidge larger. And the next smallest library in the city is 4,000 square feet. Westwood has the most children under the age of 18, and 81 to 91% of these kids aren't at reading level by 3rd grade. There's also lots and lots of equity issues present in Southwest Denver. Many residents don't have access to internet or computers. This community's been disproportionately impacted by COVID, job loss, low income to begin with, so difficulty saving. And I work for an organization called Lifestyle Local. Having the library as an anchor partner in the work that we're doing in Southwest Denver would allow us to leverage resources to bring other resources to the community of Westwood. And there are things that have been brought up throughout this entire call, things like early childhood education, opportunities for young kids after school, including art and technology, which can translate into jobs down the line, mental health supports, legal supports, safe community spaces, public health education and resources, family leadership classes, and other workforce development opportunities.
Yeah, so many cross-cutting benefits for that investment. And apologies, I think I may have mispronounced your name. I think it's Natalia as opposed to Natalie. Forgive me for that. But I'm smiling partly because, Adam, first of all, I mean, again, this remarkable evolution in how we think about infrastructure, but it's also remarkable to hear the way Natalia talks about the evolution of libraries in particular, because I think for many of us, it's like, wow, there's so many ways to get information, why do I need to go to a building? But that's not the case. There clearly are folks who need that access to books, but also to all of the other resources she was talking about. I'm sure that it's very complex to think about the construction of a new branch library. Is there anything you can share, though, on what she's describing?
Yeah, certainly. And first, I want to mention for Natalia that being passionate about your community is why we're here. So we love to hear that. In 2017, the voters here in Denver brought in the Elevate Denver Bond Program, and that's bringing a rec center to the Westwood neighborhood and really drastically increasing the amount of recreation services that community has. And I think this $400 million general obligation bond that Mr. Hanlon had spoken to earlier, that is, looking to for voter support here this November, is an opportunity to bring an investment just like this. And our bond programs in the past have allowed us to bring resources and services to communities that didn't have it. And with the lens of equity, ensuring that every neighborhood has access to equal amount of services and infrastructure will be key here. And so excited to hear the passion about a library in the Westwood area. And I think it's a great opportunity to consider that for this new bond program.
Here, I'm going to reveal some bias, Adam. I'm supposed to be unbiased, but I'm so pro-library that I'm going to take another library call. But before I do that, I see our Chief Financial Officer wanting to step in here for a minute. Brandon?
Thanks for the opportunity to chime in. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about process. I've got a lot of questions about, hey, where is this list of projects going to come from? It comes from our 6-year plan list, and that is developed through community input over multiple rounds of this kind of interaction. And I will tell you that the Westwood Library branch is a project that is on that list. So it is good to hear about projects that people are passionate about. It is on the list. That's the foundation of our process. So thanks for chiming in and giving us that feedback.
Don't go anywhere, because Katie is chiming in from Globeville, and I know wants to talk also about libraries. Katie?
Hi, my name's Katie, and I live in the Globeville neighborhood. And I appreciate Natalia a whole lot because she shared a lot of what was on my mind related to library importance in our communities. And I don't really like the way we end up getting kind of pitted against each other. So I'll advocate for a library in both Westwood and the Globeville neighborhood, and just share that there's not a library in the Globeville neighborhood, and the closest one to get to is in the Swansea neighborhood, where you have to cross the National Western Center, the railroad tracks, and I-70 to get there. It's totally not possible to walk or ride a bike there. And even though it is fairly close, it just isn't accessible. And so I would love to have a library in our neighborhood. I think it's an important resource for books, but also access to technology and community space and so many of the things that Natalia was talking about. So would love to know if the Globeville Library is on the list as well. I'm not sure exactly what that list is, but it sounds good.
It very much is, from what I'm being told. So I want to thank you for joining us with that, Katie. Adam, anything you wanted to add specifically?
Yeah, just one item, and Katie, again, thank you for the comment. You really identify two issues there, not only a need from a library standpoint, but also some transportation challenges. And I want to just mention that we recognize that the Globeville community is one of the more difficult communities to get to and from. And so that's also something that you'll see throughout our list of our 6-year investment, is making sure that we have multimodal options to get in and out of the Globeville area. So not only is there a library need, I'll speak on behalf of the city and certainly recognize that there's a mobility need in the Globeville area as well.
Yeah, it's really remarkable as I'm listening to this conversation to hear how many of these issues cross-cut, among Adam's purview, Eric's purview, Don's purview. We need childcare, but we might get children's activities at a library, which is an infrastructure investment, which could also help with resources for businesses and nonprofits. So it's just incredible the way this ecosystem is constructed. I'm going to take one more caller here in just a second. I want to ask another poll question to our audience, and then I'm going to turn to Janice, who I know has been waiting patiently. But we want to ask you specifically about what the city should prioritize as it relates to the kinds of infrastructure projects in terms of the benefits they can provide. So if you're listening to me on the phone, I've got, let's see, 4 choices. So please listen to these and then choose the one that you think the city should prioritize. If it's projects that offer the most jobs, including apprenticeships and job training, press 1. If it's projects that support tourism and hospitality industries, press 2. If it's projects that offer the most opportunities for small and minority and women-owned businesses, press 3. And if it's projects that improve access to technology like computers and the internet, press 4. So again, infrastructure can have a variety of economic benefits. What do you think the city should prioritize? If it's projects that offer the most jobs, press 1. If it's projects that support Denver's tourism and hospitality industries, press 2. If it's projects that offer the most opportunities for small, minority, and women-owned businesses, press 3. And if it's projects that improve access to technology like computers and the internet, press 4. So again, we're seeing this incredible intersection between Adam's infrastructure work and what Eric was talking about earlier as it relates to economic development, workforce development, and all that sort of thing. Let me, as I promised, turn to Janice, who I believe is actually still in this library kind of conversation. So that's great. Janice, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Janice Mares, and I live in the Barnum neighborhood. The comment I wanted to say about Westwood Library is we do know that the city is focused on going through an RFP process for that building right now. I wanted to point out that it's very vital to up your game, let the library expand or make that happen for this neighborhood, but at the same time retain the services of the local RNO, SWIC, who does great work out of that same building. They could use that help as well with infrastructure towards the building being expanded and them being able to stay in that building. The second part of my question is we need a better way to replace sidewalks. Here in Barnum, we have sidewalks that have not been replaced ever. They're crumbling, they're falling apart. We have a large amount of sidewalks that houses do not face that street. So how will you charge a homeowner to put new concrete? Maybe we can explore new and different ways to use the sidewalk itself, or use part of that money and create a pot where homeowners can get loans out of it to help pay for those infrastructure pieces. It can't all be on the shoulders of the homeowner to do the sidewalk.
Janice,
so that was my comment with regards to that.
Thank you for such thoughtful suggestions, both on libraries and sidewalks. It's funny, Adam, we may not always think about the relevance of sidewalks until we are going for what I know have become very frequent walks for me, given our crazy state of living over the last year. And it's remarkable the difference in the experience when you have a sidewalk to rely upon. Since we've had a lot of conversation about libraries, maybe to the sidewalk piece, if you have any thoughts there.
Yes, certainly. And, Janice, appreciate your comments there. Sidewalks may seem like a minor part of our infrastructure, but they're critical for the entirety of the network to work. We heard from a caller previously in regards to mass transit. You ultimately will need to get to a bus stop or whatever the transit solution may be, and sidewalks are often a key to that. When you look at sidewalk investment, the city marked its biggest investment ever in sidewalks with the Elevate Denver bond program. And we have that option again here as part of this economic investment conversation here today. But I also want to make a specific comment in regards to sidewalk repair and ensuring that the existing sidewalks that we have today are in a state of good repair and are accessible is a focus. And so we've seen a lot of innovation in this space as of recently. In Dottie here with the city and county of Denver, we're reinventing how we think and how we approach sidewalks to ensure that we can address those gaps. We recognize the challenges that it places on homeowners when that responsibility is one that they must incur. And so certainly want to emphasize the innovation that we're taking in this approach and recognize the need that sidewalks play not just in moving about a community, but also accessing the broader transportation network as a whole.
I have 2 boys who are under the age of 10, and the absence of sidewalks could mean no bike riding, no scootering. I mean, there's certain circumstances where they can do that in the street, but sidewalks make such a huge difference, I know, for so many. So interesting to have Janice's feedback, and appreciate very much your call. If you are still waiting to speak, know that we are going to take all of our remaining callers before we get off the air tonight. We're going to take one more poll question and then do those remaining callers. If for some reason you have yet to speak to a screener and have a comment you want to make, I highly encourage you to press 0 now and get into our queue so we can try and fit you in before the end of our program here at the top of the hour. Our last poll question is that infrastructure, as we've talked about, can mean building new projects, or it can mean fixing something that already exists. And the question is, what do you think the city should prioritize? Should it be projects that build something new? You'd press 1. Projects that improve something that already exists? You'd press 2. Or projects that fix something that is outdated? Press 3. So what should the city prioritize as it relates to its infrastructure projects? If it's projects that build something new, press 1 on your touchtone phone. Projects that improve something that already exists, press 2. Or projects that fix something that is outdated, press 3. And it's interesting, Adam. There's so many events where ribbons are cut and ground is broken for that new construction. I don't think we've yet figured out the best way to stage an event that the media will cover for either fixing something that's outdated or improving something that already exists. We need to get on that. I know there are communications pros on this line here, but any thoughts from you just on kind of some projects that might be in the queue that fit into those improvement or fix categories?
Yeah, certainly. And let me start with a little bit of data for everyone who's listening here tonight to hear. When it comes to how we invest, it's all about balance. The city has 25 libraries, 26,000 acres of parkland, over 120 miles of bike lanes. And in total, this all sums to $8.6 billion of infrastructure. And ensuring that we're investing in that existing infrastructure, either bringing it up to a new standard or bringing it up to provide a new capability, is just as important as continuing to build upon it. When we've heard mention of our 6-year plan and the list of projects there. That represents $4 billion in and of itself. And so there is a lot of infrastructure investment needed, and it's all about balancing it between what exists today, what may be outdated and may need just a little bit of rehab, and then how do we continue to expand our infrastructure to provide for needs in areas that have historically not had it.
Yeah, I have often thought that as I see new projects under construction, certainly it's exciting, but it would be just as nice to see certain things be, fixed or updated. So appreciate this question, appreciate folks' response. We are going to take another call, and I know that this caller has been waiting for quite some time, and we really appreciate the patience. Guadalupe, you are on the air. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm calling in regards to enhancing the Denver cultural building. It's a cultural space to be equitable across Denver. I don't believe we have that now. It would be great to have an arts and entertainment venue for Southwest Denver. The May Barnesfield Stanton Theater, located in the now Loretto Heights University campus, could be revitalized using the RISE resources to improve and enhance this long-standing theater in the southern tip of Denver County and Denver City. Nearby arts organizations run theaters that are too small or too far away. Right now, the May Barnesfield Stanton Theater is a dormant cultural asset. The May Barnesfield Stanton Theater would fill a gap much needed in Southwest Denver's arts and venue portfolio. The communities of College View, South Motley, Brentwood, Sharon Park, Dartmouth Association, Harvey Park have a nostalgic feeling towards the theater. The communities recognizes the theater's architectural significance and want it preserved. The area plan approved by the City Council recommends the saving of the May Barnesfield Stanton Theater. Thank you for listening. Guadalupe Lloyd, Denver.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. I mean, again, the patience is impressive. We should give a medal for how long she waited to speak. In the interest of time, because we do have a few more callers still waiting, I'm going to go ahead and move to another caller. But if folks want to respond to Guadalupe here in a minute, we can. I want to mention we had a comment given to us on our Spanish line that was rendered for me in English by Concepcion. The comment was, I'd like to mention that it's very important to focus on investing in health. We have insurance, but we still have to pay and pay and pay for healthcare, and I would like there to be help with this. Please consider aid for retired and elderly people who need help with medical expenses. So certainly something that I'm sure would interest Don Mares and his team, and we will try to get a response from him before we are through tonight. But I'm going to go straight to Willie May. Willie May is in Park Hill, and I know has a comment related to mental health. Willie May, please go ahead.
Thank you. My concern was the Mental Health Agency was awarded a large amount of money, and the way they deal with the mental health, it appears that they don't follow through. I have a son that is in the mental health system from the age of 14, and he's 59 now, and he gets dropped. Caseworkers after caseworkers, they don't follow through. Long-term care haven't been followed through, and he's paranoid schizophrenia. And to me, that feeds in with the homeless. When you don't have constant care that someone is that mentally ill and live on their own, you don't have the support from the mental health, either homeless or in jail. And with the diagnosis of being a diabetic, and I know there's systems around, and the number that the gentleman said called TALK, they don't return your calls. And like I said, they drop them, and then someone has to go in and ask them to pick up. Again, I believe in mental health, and they drop me.
Willie May, it's obvious that you're sort of running into several unfortunate obstacles as it relates to this. And what I'm going to do is we can reach out to you directly, as it won't be tonight probably, but it'll certainly be, as quickly as possible to get some more detailed information. I see Eric Hiraga shaking his head. I'm sure Don Mares would probably be in a position to help as well. But I'm only interjecting because we have one more caller to get to and only just a couple of minutes left in our program. But know that we will get some individualized response to you as quickly as we possibly can. Maddie Mosey has been standing by for quite some time, and I'd like to take Maddie with a comment. Maddie?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, you're live on the air. Go ahead.
Okay. My nephew is in the penitentiary, and he sent me a money order to catch it in my bank account. So I want to know what is Colorado Department of Correction letting the prisoners send folks $2,000 check money orders.
So it's a very interesting question. Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Maddie. I don't know whether we'll be able to answer it because of how short our time is, but again, we do have your direct information. I don't know if Don or Eric have anything that they could share briefly. Eric, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Sure. Again, we do have an Office of Financial Assistance, Financial Empowerment. They offer free one-on-one financial coaching and navigation that helps individuals. So if you could call 720-944-2498, maybe they would be a good first step in the process.
We want to also flag that the Department of Corrections that was mentioned earlier is a state agency, and this is the city and county of Denver. So it'd just be helpful to note that. Also, there were several comments, including one of the most poignant, our first caller, that had to do with homelessness. And we have a housing and homelessness strategic plan process underway. We encourage folks to visit denvergov.org/housing. That's denvergov.org/housing. I'm going to give one more website as we conclude here tonight, and that's risetogetherdenver.org. We're going to put up on the screen some information about how you can stay connected to this process, which is going to be continuing. And if you would like to join us, we're going to be back with you this weekend, Saturday at 9 and Sunday morning at 11 here in this same spot. But if you go to risetogetherdenver.org, you can continue to give us additional comments, take surveys, and stay a part of this conversation. I want to give a number of words of thanks to, of course, Mayor Hancock and Council President Gilmore, but also to Adam Phipps, Eric Hiraga, and Don Mares from their respective departments. Gentlemen, thank you all so very much for the detailed feedback you could give to our community. Also want to thank Brendan Hanlon, our Chief Financial Officer, for always having such robust and clear information on the complex finances of the city and county of Denver. Thanks to you. Kiki Turner is the real master of ceremonies here. She's the one who has brought us all together and made this program as smooth a flow as it has been. She's in the Department of Finance, and a huge thanks to her. Also want to acknowledge Sarah Franklin and Zach Barr, who have been helping with our presentation tonight and making sure we get callers on the air, and to Ian Cerveny and his team for assisting with call screening and polls on the telephone line. There are lots of other folks to thank, and I'm only going to thank them in bulk because we are short of time. But most importantly, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, for giving us incredible feedback and input, and for making the city and county of Denver the wonderful place to live and work and visit that it is. So on behalf of the city and county of Denver, this is Larry Schooler saying thank you very much for joining us, and good night.